Great Scott!
Are you a sports fan who loves to have a good laugh?
Oh, yeah!
Then you're in the right place.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
Life moves pretty fast.
Patriots win the
Welcome
Super Bowl!
to the Man Cave Chronicles.
Brady has his fifth!
Mom, come on. I got a game.
Henry thinks that he's actually going to play today.
Henry Rowengartner had a dream.
Rowengartner, get in the right
Playing in the major leagues. Only one
I
thing
got it.
stood in his way.
Home! Home!
Reality. Until one day, everything fell into place.
How long will he have to be in the cast?
August. And now rotate from the shoulder slowly.
Whoa! Funky butt loving. Did he say funky butt loving?
Those tendons have healed a little tight.
Now, the kid who wasn't good enough for Little League
Mom, watch this.
is pitching
Gosh, Henry, you can play for the Cubs.
Hey,
in the big leagues.
I'm the new pitcher.
12-year-old Henry Rowengartner, the youngest person in history to play Major League Baseball.
Hi, Henry. Welcome to the big show. Now!
But what can one sixth grader do against pros like these?
Give me the good stuff.
Anything he wants.
Give them the cheese. The hot, stinky cheddar.
I dare you to run. What? What's the matter? Chicken?
I'm not a chicken, you're the chicken.
This summer, the majors
Hey, pitcher.
will be answering to a minor.
Pitcher's got a big butt. Pitcher's got a big butt.
Rookie of the Year.
Gotcha.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles podcast, a podcast of talk culture where everyone has a story. My guest this week, I've been excited for a few weeks now. You've seen him in Rookie of the Year, Walt for Mickey, and the American Pie movies, Thomas Ian Nicholas. Thomas, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no problem. How are things with you?
Things are good. Just been a little hectic, traveling, touring, playing music, going to different Comic-Cons. I'll be out in Philly next week, making a stopover in France for the Cannes Film Festival first, and then continuing on. And then right now I'm currently cooking dinner for my wife and two kids.
While you're recording a podcast, right?
Yeah, because we don't ever do just one thing at a time anymore. We've got to do at least like two or three at the same time.
No, I understand completely. Like I said, before we got on the air, I told you I have two kids also, so I know how it is. What?
How old are your kids, by the way?
I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 6-month-old boy.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, my daughter is 2 and my son is 6. So almost around like a little bit like another year, but about the same sort of difference in age.
Do you enjoy parenthood?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, it's what I call the most rewarding challenge.
Oh yeah. Every day there's a new challenge.
Yeah, but it's like at the end of the day, you're like, hey man, those are my kids.
Oh yeah.
So it's totally worth it. But yes, it's definitely everything is great. I knew what I was getting into. I'm the youngest of 7, and I have like 25 nieces and nephews. So I kind of knew the craziness, but I don't think anyone else in my family has my schedule. So.
Jeez, I know. In between you being busy and everything, it must be tough.
It definitely adds an extra element, that's for sure. And my wife's a touring DJ. She just played in London last week, so we had to call in the because we were both out of town.
Yeah. So you were born in Vegas, right?
Yeah, I was born in Vegas. Lived in Northern California, but I pretty much grew up in LA since I was about 6. But yeah, I was definitely born in Vegas.
So what made you at 6 years old? What made your family move to LA?
We originally moved to LA from my mom to pursue her acting career. She had done that like once before when she was 19, before I was born, obviously. And then, kind of moved back home to San Jose. And then she was a dancer, met my dad, got married, had me, and then wanted to, pursue her career again, years later when I was about 5.
Yeah.
So we came down here for her, but then I ended up kind of getting involved on the set when I was like 5, and then she ended up kind of dropping everything and for me to pursue the career. So I sort of stepped on my mom's toes, but she supported me all the way, and I haven't really looked back since. I still love it 30 some odd years later.
Yeah. So you are big time then, huh?
Well, I don't know about that. I was doing independent films. I think my very, very first job was on this low budget independent Jan Michael Vincent movie called Hit List, and I played an altar boy. So that was my big break. And then I got an agent and did a job on Who's the Boss, where I played a young Tony Danza on the 100th episode.
Well, how was it? How was it being on that show?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, that was like I consider that my first real job, because it was the first job where I wasn't just an extra. I was, and I say just, but I mean, I had lines and things, and, I was playing a young Tony Danza. So it was awesome. We had to shoot our stuff the day before, though, because Tony had to get dressed up in like 3 hours of latex makeup so he could play his own grandfather. So we didn't shoot our scenes in front of a live studio audience, which maybe was a good thing.
So
that would have made it a little bit more nerve-wracking.
Yeah. So what made you pursue acting? Was it because of your mother, or did you just that's what you wanted to do at 6 years old?
Well, my mom was casting Atmosphere, and then she kept casting herself in like all the featured parts. So if you look in that movie, my mom plays like 6 different characters with like different hairdos and stuff. And then there was one day where she got a call at like a Sunday night at 10 p.m. and they said, "Hey, we need an altar boy, 6 a.m. call time tomorrow." So she was lucky enough that she had, or I guess I was lucky enough, or she was lucky enough. She woke me up in the morning before school and said, "You're coming to work with Mom." And so my first experience was being on that set. And that's still the thing that I love the most, is being on the set. Like that's the thing I'm addicted to.
Yeah.
So I kind of go through all the other motions and finding jobs or producing films now, or, all the sort of, accolades that come or whatever happened. I just love being on set. So that's what got me started.
So while you were doing the acting, did you get homeschooled? Did you go to a regular school?
I went to regular public school until through 6th grade. I'd do school on the set while I was working. And then in 7th grade, there was a lot of issues similar to now, really. And so in the area that we lived, they had some metal detectors at the schools, and my mom was like, "Okay, you're not going to the public school that we live by." So I ended up going to this private school, and then I got really behind because I booked Rookie of the Year right as I was starting 7th grade. So when I came back after shooting in Chicago for 3 months, I ended up having to do schoolwork through the whole summer break because they just didn't give me the right workload. So I did that for a couple of years, and then finally I ended up going to a quote-unquote perfect school where they would just give me my whole year's workload, and I only had to show up about 3 hours a day, which is the government requirement is 15 hours of schooling, which is what we do on set.
Yeah.
But I found a school that I could do that, that was by my house. And so I always say that my high school experience is basically making American Pie.
And we'll talk about that too. So you had so you did a few television roles, and then you got a role in Radio Flyer, right?
Yeah. Most of my role ended up on the cutting room floor next to Rhea Perlman, but yes, I was in Radio Flyer with Elijah Wood and Joe Mazzello and Tom Hanks and John Hurd.
And how old were you when you booked that?
If I remember correctly, we shot it in 1989, so I would have been 9 years old.
And then a year later, you did Rookie of the Year, right?
No, I mean, I think, you know, a couple years later, I did a movie called The Fear Inside.
Okay.
Which was with Christine Lottie and Dylan McDermott. It was a made-for-Showtime movie. And then the next year was when I booked Rookie of the Year, which was when I was 12.
Yeah. I can't believe that movie's almost 25 years old.
Oh, it is 25.
Yeah.
It'll be the official 25th anniversary date is July 7th of this year.
Wow. And this is like
Gearing up on the 25th.
This is one of those movies, like I was telling my wife, like I can now wait for my kids to get older to play it for them. You know, I'm 40 years old, and so that movie, 25 years ago, that was a long time ago watching that movie, and it was like, for a sports movie, it was like, a great kids movie to watch back then.
Yeah, it was a fun ride, making that film, and I just showed it to my son about a month ago, and he loved it. We watched it a few times, and I think after he watched it, he said, after the second time, he goes, Dad, I can play baseball now. I said, oh, really? What do you mean? He goes, all I have to do is float it.
Did he pick up any
and
of the?
My son.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, did he pick up any good quotes from it?
I mean, he picked up the quintessential quote, "The pitcher's got a big butt." I mean, that's like what every 6-year-old runs around and says after watching that film.
Right.
And then my son's actually he just heard me tell you that, and now he's saying it. So he's actually following in my footsteps a little bit. He just recently did his first job as an actor. He'll be on the season finale episode, or show finale, actually, of Zooey Deschanel's New Girl.
Oh, nice.
I think there's sometime this month.
Yeah, it just came back for a few episodes.
Yeah, I think the show finale, like the final show of the whole series, is like maybe next week or something like that.
Wow.
And my son Nolan is on it.
Is this something that because of you he wanted to pursue this path?
Yeah, he kind of. I mean, it was one of those things where I didn't want to push him into it, but he started out by being a little bit interested, and and then kind of came to me saying that he wanted to do it. And I said, okay, well, let's go meet with an agent who I was friends with an agent that reps kids and stuff. And so we met with her, and she just was like, oh my gosh, she's adorable. And so she first started sending him voiceover auditions, which was a lot of fun because we just do them at home and, just kind of have fun making silly voices and things. And then he got a couple callbacks where we had to go into the studio, and he recorded there, and he just seemed to really enjoy it, and kind of he kind of has the knack for it. And listen, I had some family that was in the business, but they weren't really around doing it when I was starting, so I didn't have that leg up on anything. So I'm like, you know what, if I could create that make an easier path for my son, amen.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. You always want to see your kids do better than you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where I've played a little bit of sports, but all my friends that that play sports, I love playing it, but you can act until you're 80.
Yeah.
You can play piano and play golf and and act until you're 80. So
yeah.
I definitely support a life in the arts and entertainment, and plus you get to make people enjoy themselves and laugh and smile and sometimes cry. But,
oh yeah.
I mean, it's not fun to make people cry, but in that regard, in regard to art, it is, I suppose.
So for Rookie of the Year, how did you get cast in that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I started auditioning, when I was 6, and every year I would go on anywhere from probably, and this sounds ridiculous, but, a lot of times there would be 2, 3, 4, 5 or more auditions in a week. So by the end of the year, I would have gone on 100 to 200 auditions just to land 1 or 2 jobs that year.
Yeah.
So by the time, I auditioned for Rookie of the Year, and ironically, the first time I auditioned for it, I didn't get a call back.
Oh.
And it's kind of a sordid story, but I was in the process of switching agents at the time, and I got a new agent that wanted to work with me, and so we were making the transition, and so I signed with the new agent. She calls me within the first week. She goes, "Hey, I got this audition for you for Rookie of the Year," and I said, "Oh, I already auditioned for it. I didn't get a call back." And she goes, "Well, they obviously don't remember you, so go again." So I went again, and then I got a call back, and then I got the job, which was crazy because they auditioned kids in L.A. and New York and Chicago. I've heard rumors that, they auditioned somewhere in the vicinity of like 3,000 kids.
Jeez.
And it was getting to the point where Daniel Stern was going to hire his own son, who's ironically named Henry, to play Henry Rowengartner. And then I had my call back and I met him and I got the job. And I guess now Henry Stern is a senator here in California in the 27th district. So,
wow, really? So how was it filming, like being on Wrigley Field, and how did you guys squeeze it to film it in between baseball season and stuff like that?
Well, okay, I didn't always know this story, but recently I met with Bob Harper, who produced Rookie of the Year, 25 years ago. And I was talking to him about the idea of maybe doing like a, delayed sequel or some sort of reboot of the film, because there still seems to be such a strong fan base for it. And a lot of people have shown their kids the movie and all that. So I was like, hey, what do you think? And while we were meeting about it, he told me this story about, shooting there. Because I said, Tom Ricketts said it would be cool. We could film the movie there. He's agreed to it. Because I've been going out there every year since 2008, throwing out the first pitch and singing the 7th inning stretch once a year. And so Bob was telling me that when they shot the first movie, they went and met with the Cubs administration, which is obviously not the Ricketts administration.
Correct.
Because this was 25 years ago. But they asked them, when they could shoot, and they said, you can shoot your film in October. And they said, well, what about, the postseason? Like if the Cubs make the playoffs? And they go, we can absolutely guarantee you that this 1992 team will not be playing in the postseason. And they knew this like in May. Yeah. So a vastly different team back then. But yeah, so we shot in the postseason. It was pretty cold, and they ended up having to bring in camouflage or camo netting for the ivy that's on the back wall.
Okay.
Originally, I think they wanted to paint it, and the Cubs were like, no, you cannot paint the ivy into green to make it look like it's, spring or summer. But yeah, they ended up putting like camo netting up there. So you can't really tell because it's so far away.
Yeah.
And all the shots and everything.
I mean, I would love to see a sequel. Like I was telling you, me and my wife, I talked to her about movies and sports, and I told her, like, I always have this big joke how, like, I'm a big Red Sox fan because I'm from Massachusetts, but the second favorite team is the Cubs, and I said, because of this movie, I root for the Cubs. And it's something about, I don't know, something about it. It's just, like, I want to go to Wrigley Field someday and check it out.
Well, you definitely got to come check out Wrigley. It's, like Fenway, it's a very, very special place that has, you can just kind of feel the history when you're there.
Yeah. How was it working with Daniel Stern?
Oh, Danny was great. He was he's not the zany sort of person that he kind of seemingly plays in the film, as well as other movies like Home Alone and things. He's a very caring, thoughtful, person, very passionate, and he was kind of like, like not like a dad to me, but definitely, a very cool guy, very nice guy to work with.
Yeah. So when you pitched the idea for the sequel, what kind of like, is it supposed to be you coming back to play baseball, or is it like your son or something like that?
I thought because the whole thing for me and my pitch was, and I didn't, I don't really enjoy writing because I feel like writing is like the blueprints of a movie, and for me, that's like the most stressful part of it.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for writers. I can edit a script like nobody's business, but building it from the ground up. But I had pitched that we would have, Sam Harper, no relation to Bob Harper, but Sam also wrote Cheaper by the Dozen, write the script, and he had written this this sort of faux article about 5 years ago for Sports Illustrated about how, like, where is Henry Rowengartner now?
Okay. And
his whole joke was that, this wacky healing ability, runs in his family. It's sort of like a gene. So it was that, since the time of Rookie of the Year, he busted his leg and the tendon healed tight, and he went and kicked for the Bears and took them into the Super Bowl. And then, later he, like hurt his shoulder and the tendon healed tight, and he like won the bowling championship. And, and then he cuts the interview short because his son comes up and asks him to come play catch. And he's like, oh, I got to go. I'm going to, I got something more important to do. Yeah. So I just thought, like, okay, if this is like, maybe an ongoing thing, if you kind of consider that the alter reality, since it is a fantasy, that maybe his son inherits the same quality and healing, and that he, the son, breaks his arm and gets the same sort of fast pitch, but, Henry, having quit, wouldn't want his son to do the same, go down the same road. He doesn't want him to lose his childhood.
Yeah.
So he would kind of, steer him against it. And then I thought maybe, at that point you'd have like Henry be like his mom. So his mom was a single parent. So, in today's day and age, we have a lot of, we have more than ever an uprising in single fathers.
Yeah.
So maybe make, Henry a single father so that maybe his fiance is the one that kind of is like the Jack Bradshaw in the story that, gets the Cubs to notice him and gets the kid drafted. I haven't really researched if there's a possibility of like Henry taking on some sort of position on the Cubs.
Okay.
That, he could then take the field. Like, I don't know if that exists. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to research this in baseball. Like, obviously the manager can't like go out and play if like too many players get injured, right?
Yeah, right.
But there's got to be some sort of position. I don't know. Because my idea would be you sort of fulfill like the kid's fantasy of, every kid wants to play on a major league team. And the whole thing that was cool about Rookie of the Year is that a kid got to play with the majors. So my idea was that, at one point, maybe they both were on the field like father and son together. Yeah. But, it's just like a sort of a broad stroke idea. And Fox, they want to do a sequel. They just didn't want to do it right now. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do a crowdfunding campaign later this year and see if we can't change their mind.
I think you'll get a lot of support on it. I mean, like I said,
I think it'd be fun. I mean, I would love to do it,
Yeah.
And I can't really control Universal's, idea about whether or not they want to do American Pie 5, because there's obviously a lot more people involved. Yeah. But, maybe I could twist Fox's arm.
Yeah. So after Rookie of the Year, you were in A Kid in King's Arthur Court? Yeah. How was that? How was it filming that?
Oh, that was awesome. We shot that in Budapest, Hungary. Ironically, we went there to shoot at the set. So you would think that we would go all the way to Europe so we could shoot in a real castle. But we ended up in just a set of a castle.
Wait a minute. Isn't the beginning of the scene a baseball field? There's a actual baseball field in Budapest?
No, there is no baseball fields in all of Europe. We actually had the closest baseball field to Hungary was an old military base in England.
Oh, okay.
So we actually had to fly to England to be able to shoot that scene.
And that was like the beginning and the end scene, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that is the bookend of the film.
Yeah. And how was it working with James Bond, Daniel Craig, and Kate Winslet?
I know, right? Well, that was well before he was James Bond, and that was only Kate's second movie. I think she'd only done Heavenly Creatures before that, with I believe Peter Jackson, right?
I think so.
Maybe I'm mistaken on that. But yeah, so Yeah, it was great. I mean, Kate was great. We, hung out afterwards because she was only 4 years older than me.
Okay.
So at the time I was like 14, she was 18. Daniel was pretty funny. Him and Art Malik were hanging out on set, and he was a nice guy. So yeah, it's kind of crazy to see like where their careers have gone, considering that I was the building above them in that film, and how the tides have changed.
Did you at least enjoy your time in Europe when you were filming this?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I loved being over there, and it was a good time, for sure.
So, like I said, a lot of the listeners, they know you from the American Pie movies. Did you enjoy doing those?
Yeah, each one was subsequently more fun than the previous because, as we got to know each other more, we'd spend more time hanging out and became closer friends. And then by the time we did the last one, we started, or really like the second to last one, we finally went on location because everything else was shot around the LA area. And then, so if you're just like at home, you're going to spend the weekend doing your normal stuff. But when you're on location, then you kind of spend the weekend hanging out with each other and getting into trouble. Yeah. And then, of course, the last one we shot in Atlanta. So the entire thing was on location. And it was like us having our own sort of reunion in real life, like art imitating life.
How was it like going for that role? There must have been a lot of people going for that movie back then.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, obviously no one knew it was going to be a big success. I think they were having trouble finding that role, and I think they had offered it to someone else who was, busy working on another film. And it was actually my buddy, so he couldn't do it. I didn't know this at the time. I found this out years later. But I actually bypassed the audition because I thought, excuse me, the material was a little too raunchy.
Oh wow! So what made you go back to take it?
Well, I finally read the whole script and realized that there was a lot more to it than just raunchy humor.
Yeah.
It had a lot of heart, and obviously my character, had he was a well-rounded person, someone that you could relate to, and it wasn't. There was a lot of insanely funny jokes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about the jokes. But reading the first scene of the first draft that is not actually in the film was not telltale of what the movie was really all about. I mean, I think it was Kevin and Vicky, and they were in Vicky's bedroom, and she was giving him instructions on movements.
Yeah.
Per se.
So how was it working with that cast? Like Jason Biggs and, I can name them all right now. Chris Klein and Sean William Scott and all those guys. Like, how was it? I mean, it sounds like it sounds to me like a blast just hanging out with those guys.
Yeah, everyone's super cool, and it's a great group of people. Obviously, just like the film. Not that we're stereotypical of the different things, but the film itself, if you really kind of dissect it, it kind of has someone representing each different clique in high school.
Okay.
So you've got the jocks and the nerds and the the dorks and the normal guys and everything, and there's sort of a person representing each kind of clique. And so similar to that, we're all vastly different, but it's all a great group of people, and we still keep in touch. And like I said, I've been doing a lot of Comic-Cons recently to promote some of my projects that I'm producing, some of the films that I'm making. So I've seen, Mina and Tara and Shannon and Chris Owen, who played the Shermanator, at some of these events, and it's been great to, know they're like my real, like I said, I didn't go to real high school, so these are my high school friends.
Yeah. Do you remember like one of the funniest things that happened on set in those movies that you can share with the listeners? Man, trying to think of,
something that would be worthy of a story to tell, of something like super funny. I mean, there was just great days where, you know, sometimes it was hard to keep a straight face, especially in the scenes with Sean William Scott. Like, he's just a funny dude. And, you know, there was a lot of antics on Reunion, for sure, where we were definitely playing more pranks on everyone. Because, you know, we know everyone better. I don't know if there's any, like, one sort of story that stands out above the rest.
Yeah.
Per se, just because, you know, you're talking about the course. Like, next year is the 20-year anniversary of American Pie, and we've done 4 films, so there's so much in my mind that flashes when you're like, tell me a funny story from the set. I'm flooded with, like, every film we shot for 3 months, so I've got like 9 months of memories over the course of 20 years. You know?
Oh yeah. Do you think we're gonna see another one?
You know, Universal was super happy with what John and Hayden wrote and the film that we all made with Reunion, and they hired them to write another movie, and John and Hayden wrote it, and as far as I know, it's been sitting on a shelf at Universal, so to speak, for 5 years.
Oh wow.
So I don't know what the plan is with it. I mean, when we did the premiere, you know, one of the head honchos at Universal was like, yeah, we're super happy. Like, thanks, great job. And, you know, looking forward to next year.
Yeah.
And like that, we even put that line in there in the movie, like, hey, we should do this every year. And I don't know what the deal is, what the holdup is.
Yeah.
So, but it's, you know, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibilities. Maybe at some point, whatever it is that's holding it back will get out of the way.
Yeah.
And we'll go have some fun.
There you go. So in 2015, you played Walt Disney in Walt Before Mickey. How did you prepare yourself for a role like that? I mean, that's a pretty big role.
Yeah. Well, let's just put it this way. They called me and asked me if I wanted to play Walt Disney, and I, of course, said yes immediately. You know, that would be an honor. And then they said, great, you start next week. So 5 days later, I was on a plane to Florida, and you could say that I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. So I think I kind of, after watching Saving Mr. Banks, which had come out around that time, I sort of decided to bypass, you know, Tom Hanks' performance and the Walt that we kind of all grew up knowing.
Yeah.
I thought Tom Hanks did a great job. But you know, that's not the Walt that's in the movie, because I was thinking about, you know, myself as a young man. I say that now like I'm so old, but you know, at the time we shot this like 4 years ago, so I was in my early 30s, and I was thinking like, okay, I'm playing this character from 17 to 27. You know, obviously the Walt that I grew up, you know, watching introduce, you know, Winnie the Pooh cartoons in his blue cardigan sweater is not the Walt that would be, you know, the energy and vigor of a 17-year-old. Because that's, you know, even now I have a lot of energy, but not the same that when I was, you know, 17 or 20. So I just kind of focused all my energy on what would drive a person to continue going and moving forward despite going bankrupt and failing so many times. Because I didn't really know anything about his early life and career prior to getting the offer. And I was really surprised, because it's like, I don't know, well, maybe I'm not, because you think of Walt Disney and, you know, obviously the man and the company and everything is a household name. You can't go anywhere in the world and people don't know what Disney is.
Correct.
And Mickey Mouse.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess I never really thought like, oh yeah, anyone who succeeds had to fail. The only difference is they just kept trying.
So tell us a little bit about your band. I didn't even know you had a band until like a couple weeks ago.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, we've never been signed to a major label, so we haven't had that big promotional push so to speak. So it's not surprising that you wouldn't have heard of it. But we have released like 6 albums over the last 10 years and played 600 shows and toured in the UK and Denmark and Austria and around the US and even all the way to Hawaii, exotic Hawaii.
I did read online that you did write a song for the soundtrack for one of the American Pie movies, but the song never made it.
No, it finally did for American Reunion.
Oh, for Reunion.
Yeah, because it was one of those things. I had finished my first album right before American Pie 1, and so I asked Paul and Chris Weitz and Craig Perry and Chris Moore, the directors and producers, if I could get a song on the soundtrack possibly, and they all listened to the first album and they said, yeah, your album's great, like that shouldn't be a problem. But then the music supervisor kind of didn't let that happen because I guess he had his own ideas about what kind of music he wanted on there. So I tried again. I had finished my EP for American Pie 2 and sort of did the same thing. Like there's the same producers and J.B. Rogers was the first AD on the first one, so he directed the sequel. So I was like, hey, can I get a song on there? And he's like, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. And once again, same music supervisor, he didn't let it happen. So I tried again for American Wedding, and it was the same thing. So finally, what ended up happening is instead of me just like calling and trying to ask for a favor, I played the rap party for American Reunion.
Okay.
And after I got done with my set, Hayden came over and he's like, wow, like you're really good. Like, could we should put like a song of yours on there. And I was trying to do a cover of Laid, because Matt Nathanson did the one for American Pie 2. And obviously TINBand did the first one. So I was like trying to get my own version, which is why that's on a couple of my albums. And so they were like, well, we want to go with the original for that, but maybe you can cover like Lit or, Blink-182 or something like that. And I was like, cool, yeah, just let me know what song you guys want. And then I sent them a bunch of things. They ended up picking one of my originals, which they play in the movie right when Sean sticks his fingers in my mouth in American Reunion. Is my song playing in the background, which is pretty funny. And then they actually put it on the soundtrack album as well. So it wasn't just like, even though it only plays for like 30 seconds, like any song in the movie, they put it on the actual soundtrack album that they released into stores, which was pretty cool. So it only took me 13 years, but I finally got a song on the soundtrack.
Do you like tour all over the country, or did you just stay like in the California area?
I mainly tour in the Midwest, so around Illinois, Ohio, Iowa area, down in Nashville and all that. And then I do East Coast stuff, New York, Virginia. And then probably my big stomping ground besides the Midwest is the UK. We've done like 6 or 7 tours over there, and I've done Denmark and Germany a couple of times and Austria a couple of times. So I haven't like been to every part of the world, but definitely, we do like other things around the U.S. as well.
Okay.
But like I said, the sort of the hot spots for us is like the Midwest and the UK. Those are like our 2 major touring areas.
And now you also produce and direct. You've gone through that stage a little bit more than acting, right?
Well, every time I produce or direct, I also act in it. So I hire myself because that's like narcissism meets nepotism. So the last film that just came out in theaters in February got picked up by Sony. It's called Living Among Us, and it's a vampire flick. And it's actually John Hurd's last movie. I had worked with John 28 years ago on Radio Flyer.
Yeah.
And so this is the very last thing that he worked on. It was probably like the Monday before he passed on a Friday, and the Monday before that he was doing ADR for us. So it's kind of crazy that he's not here anymore because he was such a great actor. And I'd known him for a long, long time. But the film is great. He's great in the film. We dedicated it to his memory. And Andrew Keegan's in it, and Esme Bianco from Game of Thrones, and William Sadler is in it, and James Russo. The one that I did previous to that is called The Lost Tree. That came out in theaters in October. Both of these, by the way, are available on DVD. You can get it at like Walmart or Target or Best Buy. It's on all streaming platforms. And The Lost Tree, I think, just came out on Redbox across the country as well. And then I'm shooting like 3 more films this year.
Nice.
Doing a neo-noir drama called Adverse that we start shooting in June. I can't really tell you exactly who will be playing the main antagonist, but I promise you, no matter which of the 2 guys we get, you will definitely know who they are.
Nice.
And then I'm doing a comedy called Bitcoin that I'm shooting at the end of July. And then the other project that's brought me to all my Comic-Cons across the country for the last year is a fantasy called Handbook for Mortals that's based upon a best-selling book. And that's a fantasy about a young woman who moves to Las Vegas to join a magic show, but it turns out she can actually do real magic.
Wow. Do you enjoy doing the Comic-Cons? And meeting fans?
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's I mean, I essentially get to say thank you to anyone who's ever watched my films over the last 30 years. You know, what other job can you like sign up to like, hey, I'm going to go to this Comic-Con, and then people are going to come up and say, I loved your movie, and I'm going to say, thank you so much for watching. Here's what I have coming up next.
Yeah, you're right.
So
you're right about
I feel, yeah, it's a really fun experience, and you know, there's such a tangible thing about getting to meet people in person that enjoy your work.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
versus just continuing to kind of have this like separation. And I feel like social media is great and it kind of bridged that gap, but it's not tangible, you know?
Yeah.
And as excited as people get, like if I answer them back or favorite their tweet, if they tag me, or if I think something's funny and retweet it or whatever it is, it's not tangible. It's not that like real life moment. It's like the difference between watching a film at home. You know, we all have nice sized TVs now. They're all pretty affordable, you know, for the most part. And then, you know, but like there's nothing like going to a theater full of, you know, 100 other people that you don't know and experiencing something at the same time. It's like going to a concert versus listening to an album. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I went to my first Comic-Con like last year. And the only reason I went there is because I wanted to meet Billy Zabka from Karate Kid.
Oh, nice.
It was great, you know, just you know, go there and just meet somebody from, you know, one of my favorite movies growing up.
Yeah, it's funny too because John and Hayden, you know, who wrote and directed American Reunion, wrote and directed Cobra Kai.
Yeah, yeah, it's already out actually. It came out last week.
Oh, did it come out last week?
It came out last week. I haven't watched it yet, but I read an article today. It already had 15 million views.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I remember when they told me, I talked to them, I think it was when I was doing the premiere for Lost October, or maybe it was Living Among Us in February, and they were in Atlanta shooting that. I think it was last year that they were shooting. So that's great, man. Those guys are super funny, and I saw the preview for it, and it looks really good.
Yeah. Is there
that's what I mean, like, you know, rebooting those old school things like Karate Kid. I'd love to do something, you know, that's a genuine reboot of Rookie of the Year. That would be, you know, that would not sort of just ride the laurels of the brand, but actually do it justice.
But you have to be in it if you reboot it.
Oh, for sure. There's no question. Yeah. I would do it in a heartbeat. And like I said, I might, you know, do that crowdfunding campaign, see if I can't change Fox's mind.
There you go. Is there anything else you want to tell listeners before we end this?
Man, I don't know. If you, I guess, as far as Comic-Cons are concerned, if you ever hear of a a Wizard World in your area, I will be at all of them. So come say hi if you are in a city where there's a Wizard World. I'll be in Philly in a couple of weeks.
Nice. All right. And how can the listeners find you on social media? What are your handles?
Well, my name is too long for all social media. So at TINBand is my handle for Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So just at TINBand.
All right. I want to personally thank you for coming on, and this was a blast, and I hope you come back on and talk about your other projects in the future.
Yeah, man. Thank you for being flexible with the schedule.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry for the confusion leading up to this moment that we finally got to chat. But thank you so much for having me on your show, man.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.